Hi everybody and welcome to episode 7 of my school leader interviews. Thank you very much for your support on the interviews that I've done so far, and thanks very much for all the school leaders who've given up their time to be interviewed. I know that really the focus is on finding out a little bit about the person as well as the way they like to lead and their story and what they're trying to do. So it's no different today. I'm joined by AnnMarie Williams. AnnMarie, do you want to just introduce yourself to everybody in terms of your role and what you do?
So I am executive head over both Humston Infant and Humston Junior Schools. I've been here for 12 years, coming up, I think it's my 12th year. Originally came as head of the junior school back when things weren't so good, schools in special measures, and stayed, and the infant school joined the trust about 3 years ago. And that's where we are now.
Excellent. Moving on, we're going to talk probably quite a bit about your approach in the school. So one thing I'm really interested in talking about is your approach with project-based learning and how you deliver that. But before we do that, what's the first thing you grab in the morning?
I have a big, hairy, ginger dog. And she generally makes her presence known as soon as she can hear the alarm going and the shuffling around. So that, dog, and then a coffee. Coffee machine goes straight on.
Sounds like a plan. Do you know, I think every head has said, apart from very few have said coffee. I think pretty much coffee is the one, isn't it?
Mainline it.
Yeah. Who is your biggest inspiration in life?
I think I'd find it hard to pin it down to one person, but I'm very fortunate in that I have an amazing group of women around me who are strong and confident, and they've always got my back. My heads of school here and my leadership team are amazing women. My team leaders are just talented and inspirational in it, and you've seen the school today and you've seen their work. I've got great friends who achieve amazing things in their lives, great wing women. My daughter is training to be a teacher. She's a massive inspiration. So for me it would be those amazing, strong, confident women who challenge you, inspire you, always have your back.
I like it. And what do you think people notice about you?
I think it's probably more an energy. I've been told I'm a fast walker, I'm a fast talker. So for me, I hope it'd be the energy that I bring to leadership and to my life.
Yeah. And what do you hope that people recognise about you? If that's what you think people recognise you,
do I hope?
You hope people recognise?
I hope that people see a commitment and a passion to the job. I'm still incredibly passionate about the profession and everything that it has to offer as a career, and really kind of honing that sense of leadership. I still think it's the best job in the world, and I hope that people would see that there's an integrity there. I love the Brené Brown quote that integrity is courage over comfort, and doing what is right over what is fast, fun or easy, and I use that all the time. I have that in my office. So for me, I hope that integrity comes through.
And do you think that's been echoed in your career so far, that kind of idea of in fact, I've actually got a question coming up, being fair or being nice.
Okay.
Do you think that idea of courage has been reflected in your career path so far, in terms of what you've done?
I think I've walked the path that I've wanted to walk, and I'm here in this organisation because I love it and I still believe in it. And I think if you lose that sense of belief in what you're doing, you kind of lose that integrity a little bit. But I think the nice, fair question is an easy one, and it's another one of those either ors. And I don't think it's perhaps as simple as either or. I think if you're treating people fairly and you're behaving with integrity and you're doing what's right for the organisation, then that is nice in a different way. as opposed to nice being trying to please people, because doing what's right and what's fair for the organisation isn't always the same thing.
I understand. And what do you think your biggest weakness or fatal flaw is?
Fatal flaw. I really like cheese. But apart from that, my professional fatal flaw, I eat too much cheese, but I think I'd probably go for, I'm quite hard on myself professionally and personally, and I think if you're hard on yourself, tend to be quite hard on other people. So I think that's probably a challenge for people around me, and pace. And I've learned that not everybody can move or wishes to move at my pace. And yeah.
How do you think being hard on yourself translates into, for example, a moment or what does that translate into in terms of a behaviour?
So you want the best. For example, I want the best outcomes for the children. I want to be able to walk around the school and say, I know the provision is the absolute best that it can be in this organisation today. And when I know we're not quite there, it chips away a little bit. It's those moments where you think things could be better and you kind of want to immediately get there. But it's a huge organisation, 700 children on site, and taking everybody with you. It's go fast or go together, isn't it? And go together takes time.
Yes, and talking of that time, you've been here for, is it 12 or 13?
12 years.
12 years, and presumably you've been on that kind of journey through that period.
Yeah.
So as a leader, I think we're going to touch on this later, but as a leader who is maybe coming into a school or is starting off on a journey, I don't like that kind of phrase. I don't know.
You don't like the journey?
Oh, I like the journey, but the phrase of a journey of rapid improvement or something like that, those kind of buzzword catchphrases that make me cringe sometimes a little bit. But I was going to say, if you were to advise a new leader, or if you were to talk to a new leader about who's about to embark on that journey, who has these high aspirations and these ideals that they want to go to, how do they take the staff with them on that journey?
Yeah. I think you've got to have real clarity over what your beliefs and your vision for education is, and to be able to kind of share that rationale with staff. And also to build a team around you that share that belief and that vision. And I'm always really honest when people come to work here about what we are and our ethos and what we're trying to achieve. And it's not for everybody, and that's absolutely fine. I think it's about people knowing what the organisation's all around and what it has to offer them. And I believe we've got a fantastic offer for people that come to work here. But I also appreciate that it might not be for everybody. But what I would say to new leaders is be clear on your vision and what you want to achieve. Have your kind of grey ground on what's movable, and then have your absolutes of the things that are not your fixed pieces. My friend Catherine talks about that. Williams.
Catherine Morgan.
Yeah, talks about the Dylan Williams concept of things that are like tight and things that are loose. And I think get clear on, in terms of teaching and learning, what you're absolutely tight on. And so there's a looseness around some of the things that we do here, but there's an absolute vigour around some of the systems that are underneath that. And I think if, as a leader, you're clear on what those things are and they underpin everything else, that's a good way to get people on board.
And this kind of ties in nicely with my next question, which is, what is your biggest strength?
My biggest strength, I think, I'm really committed, I'm determined. If I'm in, I'm all in. And I'm absolutely all in with my whole heart. As opposed to I'll put a toe in the water. And that's a good thing, and it's a bad thing as well. But yeah, I'm fully committed, and the reason that I'm still here in 12 years later is I remember saying to the staff when we were in special measures, and we were in a real mess, and the building was falling down, and it stank literally, and we didn't have teachers in classrooms. I remember saying, if you stay and go with me on this journey. I promise we will get there. And I'd made that commitment, and for me there was no other option, but we were going to see that through.
That's amazing, and I'm presuming a number of those staff are still, maybe some of them are still here.
Yeah, so one of my great joys is my team leaders, and you met some of them walking around today.
I did.
They all joined me as NQTs, some of them 4 or 5 years ago, some of them now 7, 8, 9 years ago. And for me, the joy of watching them grow from NQTs to middle leaders to my leadership team now is, it's just a real privilege. And seeing them thrive as leaders and as professionals.
Do you think there's truth in that kind of phrase of good leadership is the leadership that you grow in others? Do you think there's truth in that?
Yeah, absolutely. And to give enough space for people to have their own style, but enough boundaries for people to know what leadership looks like in this organisation. And I think we kind of tread that tension quite well.
And what's the one personality trait that you just simply don't have time for?
Oh my goodness. I think lack of responsibility.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's, there's probably a better way of saying it than that.
Yeah.
People not being able to take responsibility. So things go wrong all the time in life, as you know, and that's absolutely fine. But we kind of operate on a system of no excuses. And I think if you can put your hands up and talk about what went wrong, what you learned and why, and then it's how you rebuild from there, isn't it? It's like when something's gone wrong, how do you recover the situation? And I've got lots of time for that, but I find it really hard when people, it's that person's fault, it's this person's fault, it's not fair, I didn't, rather than just, yeah, things went wrong, I made a mistake.
Yeah. And we've already had the kind of what's better, being fair or being nice?
Yeah.
So I think we know the answer to that
Yeah.
one based on what you said. But what do you prefer, comfortable silences or non-stop conversation?
So people who know me quite well will probably say non-stop conversation, because I do like a really good talk, a dinner table chat.
Yeah.
However, we have done quite a lot of work on the fierce conversations principles, and one of those is, and I love this, let the silence do the heavy lifting. And I love that. I just think it's really profound. And so we've really stepped into, as leaders, just allowing there to be silence and let people think.
In conversations.
In conversation, in meetings,
with regards to,
with regard to children. You know, the answer is not always immediate, and sometimes it's a much better answer when you're not pressed to give that immediate. And I think we do that to children all the time, don't we? Like you've got 3 seconds to answer this question. And as adults, we hate that, don't we?
Yeah. Right, you've got 3 seconds to answer this question.
Oh my God.
What's the most embarrassing thing that happened to you as a teacher?
So when I hadn't been teaching very long, I used an inappropriate word in the classroom, and I was just mortified as soon as it came out. It wasn't a bad one. Just
grade 2.
It was a grade. It was probably a tier 2, 3 word.
Yeah, well,
I knew I shouldn't have said it as soon as it came out, and the kids all went, Miss swore, and I had to go straight to my head teacher, Angela Kirk, if you're listening, and say, knock on her door and say, I've done a terrible thing. I'm a terrible teacher. And I was just devastated. And she said, well, what did you say? And I told her, and she went, oh, they probably didn't even notice.
Do you think, I think there's a lot of truth in the kind of the bubble that we can get into as a teacher in thinking everything has such gravity, when in reality a lot of children will walk out on a Friday and will absolutely forget every bad lesson you think they've remembered. They'll have already forgotten it, and the next lesson is a clean slate. And I think young teachers, especially new teachers, it's so easy to get into that. Yes, what you do matters, but thinking they remember everything and thinking they've got everything.
And it's not ruined in one lesson. Like, you know, nothing's ruined in a day, is it really?
No, I hope not. there's a trend with regards to kind of behaviour of kind of no excuses. The phrase no excuses. You mentioned no excuses actually earlier when it came to people taking responsibility.
Yeah.
But when it comes to behaviour, what is your general philosophy on that as a school leader, and how does that reflect in the way your schools have been?
Okay, so I like the Mary Poppins School of Behaviour Management, firm but fair.
Warm, strict?
I don't think we'd go warm strict, because I think we have few boundaries, but they're firm boundaries. So we don't have silent corridors, we don't have the silent lessons. We're strict on uniform, we're strict on manners, and the way that children speak to each other and the way that children speak to staff really matters to me. But I think we'd probably be slightly looser around the edges than warm strict, I don't know.
Yeah.
Lukewarm strict.
So how would you kind of, if you'd say the Mary Poppins School of Behaviour Management, how would you summarise that for someone?
We have very clear sanctions which children know about, but we have exercised them with flexibility and with an understanding of children's different needs, and an understanding that our children are quite little. So some of our children are 4 and are really just starting to understand consequences and right and wrong. And ultimately, we want school to be a really positive place, so we've done a lot of work on positive behaviour language, and we use scripted language, and we're all about building those positive relationships with children. And even those really difficult children need someone to be their champion, don't they? They need someone to like them. So we are firm on sanctions where sanctions are needed, but there's a flexibility around that.
That makes perfect sense. Moving on to pedagogy, because we discussed this at the very beginning in terms of there is a real, you see it on social media, you see it in schools. There's a real kind of dichotomy, I guess, that's developed between inquiry or project-based learning versus something more traditional, teacher-led, direct instruction. Yeah. So you are kind of down this kind of project-based learning approach. So what does that mean, and how does that translate into a process that a teacher might go through?
So we are and have been successfully project-based learning for, I would say, 7 years, have developed that and really refined the process over time. And I think project-based learning is a commitment. It's not a quick fix, and it is a big commitment. We have really strong systems around project-based learning. So whilst it might look like, and it's that loose type thing again.
Free-for-all.
Yeah, it might look like a free-for-all, but actually there are really strict systems, really strict parameters. Projects go through a very strict process in terms of how they're developed. All the projects are based on really tight subject knowledge, which is planned around a project rubric, and there's a quality assurance process that kind of revolves around that. So in terms of the kind of knowledge and inquiry debate, my personal belief is that we take the knowledge and we want children to have really well embedded knowledge, and for that to be really challenging, but we want them to do something with it and not to just have knowledge for knowledge's sake. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we want them to be able to apply that in context. We want them to be independent thinkers and problem solvers and engage with that knowledge in a sense of the real world and what they will eventually use that project-based knowledge, they know that knowledge for. So it's not an either or for us, it's really tight teaching for knowledge where that is needed, moving into application and children really understanding the difference between wisdom and knowledge and being able to be thoughtful in the decisions that they make around knowledge.
So you don't think that, for example, one argument might be, okay, the just tell them, the just tell them phrase, it's quicker to just tell them.
Yeah.
Right, so what's the advantage, in your view, project-based learning versus just tell them?
So first of all, they see how that knowledge and that just tell them is connected to the real world. So we're really focused on making information and learning meaningful. And tell them might be quicker, but actually scaffolding them into really knowing and understanding is much more powerful in that it's embedded. They make connections across, they make connections between subjects, they make connections to their own world. And what we find is that because we work on such a level of depth, our children can talk about projects that might have been things that they studied, 4 or 5 years ago. And they have a really firm grasp still on the key concepts, the language, the technical aspect of projects. So for us, it has been a way of just making that much more meaningful and relevant for children.
I've got it. And I have to say, from the outcomes I've seen, it's absolutely stunning what I've seen. Anyway, when you're recruiting teachers, what is the perfect candidate?
Oh, well, there probably isn't a perfect candidate, but somebody said to me kind of early on in my career about hire for attitude, train for skills. And I think I'm not as black and white as that, but I have taken that on board. And in terms of attitude, we've got a really big focus on people being professional learners here and being able to model those professional learning attributes that we want the children to have. And we've got what I think is an amazing professional learning offer. So we're looking when people come through the door, is this person a learner? Are they motivated? Do they want to learn? Are they still, are they interested in pedagogy and research, and can they demonstrate that? As well as, we've got a big team culture here. Team is everything. And we want people who are team players and can work within those teams and be supportive of each other, because that's kind of how project-based learning works.
Yeah.
So for me, we're looking for those two big things: attitude, the positive attitude, and their capacity to be great learners. And then the skills bit, obviously, we hope there is potential in the teaching skills that they demonstrate when they arrive or when they come for interview. But also, I think that because our professional learning offer is so strong, that people do develop really quickly here. So, it's probably about having the right professional attitude.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what does it, if I use the phrase authentic teacher wellbeing, or genuine teacher wellbeing, what does that mean to you, and how does that translate into practice?
So in terms of culture, I think it's about the day-to-day practice of how people care for, speak to and look after each other, as much as it's about the things like, and we do all those extra things like additional PPA cover, people can take additional time off. We always try and accommodate people's personal lives and be flexible around that. But it's, for me, the day-to-day conduct as well. And there is a real understanding of right-mindedness here, and the way to speak to people, the way to support people, the way to treat people, that makes it have that kind of, it's got a very relaxed feel.
And is that a personnel thing, or is that a culture that you've actually tried to embed somehow?
Yeah, I think probably both. I think I'm quite non-hierarchical in my leadership style. And I think there is that kind of sense of open friendliness and kind of collaborative work across the school because of that. But also when people come to look around school or come for interview, we get a sense very quickly about whether they are great communicators, whether they're prepared to pitch in when times are tough.
I should have picked up that picture frame. I failed
that you knocked off.
I didn't knock it off. That's such a lie.
But yeah, so we want people who have that resilience as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And where do you think, going back to the conversation about leaders, and particularly leaders coming in, where do you think new leaders go wrong?
That's a great question. I think for me, when I was very early into my leadership career, first few years, is not thinking deeply enough about embedding things before you moved on. So there's sometimes such a lot to do and you think, right, I've got to tick this box, and it's kind of fool's gold because you end up having to go back to the beginning and really embed what you started with in the first place. So I think when you start out on that leadership journey and you're enthusiastic and you want to do everything and change the world overnight, and that's great, but an understanding that to really take people with you, you have to offer really good quality professional development and give people time. I don't think we give people enough time to really embed and imply and practice before we move on to the next thing.
Is the time for them to do that?
Absolutely. I mean, I always say we don't do many things, but what we do really well. So we've never been a school that will have 4 or 5 different focuses at a time. We'll work on something and we'll work on it in depth and really refine it and hone it. So our project-based learning curriculum is a really good example. This year is being refined in the systems, and we're coming back to them every single year and not writing a new way of planning, but refining the ones that we've already got. And I think that's when you get something really special.
That makes perfect sense. And what percentage of you in work is you?
What percentage of me in work is me? I think because I've been doing the job for such a long time, I think the boundaries are really blurred. So I think, there's probably a lot more of me in work than I realised, and probably a lot more of work in me at home as well. But for me, the boundaries are blurred because I genuinely love what I do, and for me, if I'm at home and I'm writing a blog or reading or talking to people on the phone about work stuff, that's not necessarily in my head work.
Yes.
Because it's all bled into one now. It's all a grey ground.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That's about it, actually.
Amazing.
I think we're gonna stall there. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for talking to me. I was thinking, as a last question, while I click off on the interview, that you could maybe just tell people about your role with Women Ed, because we touched on that at the beginning. We didn't really go into it, and why you think that organisation is important and so on.
Yeah.
You can talk to them.
I'll talk to the camera. So I got involved in Women Ed through Twitter about 5 years ago, and I went to the first conference, and I believe it was in Microsoft in London, although they kind of merge into each other after a while. And I met an amazing woman called Hannah Wilson, who is a great friend of mine, and I was just bowled over by the whole concept of Women Ed and women supporting each other and building networks. And so I volunteered to be a regional leader about 4 years ago, and have loved it. Love the women that I've met through Women Ed. I just think it's really powerful for women to support each other and think about how we kind of break through some of those barriers that are reducing but still exist out there for women. It's a great organisation, and the unconference, the local events are great ways to just network, meet other people, and I would really recommend follow Women Ed # on Twitter, get yourself to a Women Ed event, meet some Women Ed people, they're nice.